Next stop everywhere.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS, or, well, still the basement of solitude because Shakes Fist coronavirus, and ready to talk some Doctor Who, some more classic Doctor Who, as we're back in that mode once again. And, of course, I'm joined by just my partner in time, but not just my partner in time, if you take my meaning. So everybody, please welcome, of course, Jesse Jackson, my wonderful co-host.
Hello, Charles. It is nice to be kicking it old school, just you and I. Always love our guest companions, and it's always a lot of fun, but it is always kind of special when it's just you and I get to sit around and talk. We're, as you mentioned, we're going through some of the classic Who, and one of my favorite companions is Jamie.
Yes.
And so I was really looking forward to this one. And we already talked about this. I tweeted it saying it was okay. And you went, no, it's more than okay.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to talking to you about it.
Yes. So what Jesse's talking about here at episode 184, we're going to be talking about the Web of Fear. And this is a pretty highly regarded one from the Patrick Troughton era. A lot of fans finally remember this one, especially since it was restored back in 2013, which I'll talk about a little bit more in our trivia section. But Jesse and I here kind of kicking it a little bit old school because, just him and I, because after all, that's how it all started here on Next Stop Everywhere. Just he and I talking Doctor Who once upon a time. So to give a little background on this one really quickly, this was written by Mervyn Haseman and Henry Lincoln, who also wrote the Doctor Who stories from the Troughton era, the Abominable Snowman, which was kind of like the original story to this story.
Yeah, I was really impressed by that. Sorry to jump in.
That's okay.
Because this is a sequel, and I didn't know how often Classic Who did that, but I thought it was kind of nice that there was that added depth because they had seen this before. Yeah. So I thought that was a nice surprise.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the Abominable Snowman, that's easy for me to say, doesn't exist as far as video. Now the audio exists. So theoretically, we could review it at some point as we listen to the audio, which I do have. But it's not really a direct sequel. There's the span of I believe it's 40 years difference as we kind of pick up with Professor Watling, or excuse me, Professor Travers, played by Jack Watling, who I'll talk about here in a minute. And so he's a little older. He now has a daughter. So, and that's kind of like the big connection. And of course, we have the returning villains from the Abominable Snowmen in the form of the Great Intelligence and the Yeti, which of course we're going to talk about.
Absolutely.
Haseman and Lincoln also wrote The Dominators, which is a story that is not as well regarded, but some fans kind of like it. That's also from the Troughton era. I believe it was the first one from Troughton's final season, if I'm not mistaken, in season 6. This was directed by Douglas Camfield and was the 5th serial of season 5 from 1968. So we're still in the 60s a little bit. starring, of course, Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor, Frazer Hines as Jamie McCrimmon, and Deborah Watling as Victoria Waterfield once again. So, Jesse, before we get into our guest cast and some trivia, obviously, I'm dying to know your general thoughts. I know you kind of dismissed this, at least at first, as just okay. So, as you finished the story, was that pretty much your feeling as well?
Yeah, I think this is unfortunately one of my consistent complaints about Classic Who.
Yeah.
And it's, you have to accept the fact that it's going to be a little slower paced. They've expanded it longer. So
Right.
and sometimes that doesn't always happen. Like, it's a really good story and it moves along at a good pace. I thought this one's a little slow,
Yeah.
a little too, like the scenes of like the Doctor, them stuck in the underground, doesn't really help move the story. But it was fine. I mean, this is not certainly a painful episode to watch, and I'm trying to give it more praise than that.
Okay.
I enjoyed it. I don't think we've seen an episode of Victoria before. I liked her. I always loved Jamie. And I'm sure there is actually a couple reasons why I'm going to bring up Outlander, but let me just start right away. Because of that, I always have affection for him.
Right.
And I'm sure you're going to bring this up, right? But Matt Smith based a lot of his performance on Patrick Troughton's performance.
Yes.
And if you watch it with that vision, I think you enjoy the show even more. So from a historical perspective, I really love the episode. Story-wise, it was okay, but I'm looking forward to talking to you about it.
Okay. All right. That's fair. I've been a fan of this story. Only got to, like, for the longest time, only had episode 1 of this story, and until we got the rest, which is, I guess I might as well go ahead and talk about this in our trivia section. So we only had that for like 40 years. Only part 1 survived. And it wasn't until all the way until 2013, so just 7 years ago, the story was rescued as episodes 2, 4, 5, and 6 were recovered from all places, Nigeria, in 2013. Episode 3 is sadly still missing, but to kind of complete the story, they used the surviving audio with what's called telesnaps. So they're essentially like still pictures, ordered sequentially, so that you can kind of follow along a little bit better than just listening to the audio alone.
How did that work for you?
It takes a little getting used to. I've obviously done a few of these, especially with the Hartnell and Troughton eras.
Yeah.
Because obviously some of those stories are missing. So I mean, it's not as I think it's better than just listening solely to the audio, unless you're fond of kind of leaving it up to your imagination a little bit. But at least the telesnaps, I don't think it's as good as animation, and certainly not as good as having the actual video. But I think it's better than just the audio alone.
So I wonder if because...
And I'm sure you have problems with it, I'm guessing.
No, actually I didn't. That's what I was going to share, is because I'm a huge Ken Burns fan. And that Burns
documentary stuff.
Where he does, often he'll take a photo and they'll move the camera and make it seem, there's some dramatic to it.
Try to bring it to life a little bit.
Yeah, so this didn't bother me at all. I was
okay, good.
Yeah, and so I do think it is better than just having just the audio. I have not watched too many of the animated episodes, so I will have to give that a chance to see if I like that as much as I did this. But I wasn't bothered by this at all. In fact, I enjoyed that episode just as much as any of the others.
Okay, that's good. Guest cast this time, of course. have to mention right off the bat, we get the debut of, oh, hey, Nicholas Courtney as Colonel, not Brigadier, not yet, Alastair Lethbridge-Stewart. Courtney, of course, had played in a previous Hartnell story. He played a character named Brett Vion in the Daleks' Master Plan. And interestingly, as a little bit of a trivia side note, an actor named David Langton was originally cast as Colonel Lethbridge-Stewart, but he pulled out before rehearsals. And Nicholas Courtney, who was originally cast in the story as Captain Knight, was given the part instead. And so you kind of, that's one of those like, well, if it just kind of, I guess it's kind of like a whole web of time type thing where, roads not traveled and how things, like a little bit of a turn left there, whether how things would have been different had Nicholas Courtney stayed in the role of Captain Knight.
I know that's one of our
I'm
categories.
sure we wouldn't know his name. But
I know that's one of your categories, but just as a quick hit, he comes across immediately as someone who's interesting, a well-defined character, and that's, I think, a lot to do with the acting and the way he carried himself, not necessarily the writing.
Yeah.
He has that presence, and so I think that was a lucky break for him, and I think it was a lucky break for the show.
Yeah, because obviously we don't have unit yet. It's just Colonel. I keep wanting to call him the Brigadier, but he's not the Brigadier yet. So Colonel Lethbridge-Stewart, being a leader in the military. So it doesn't even have the United Nations Intelligence Task Force yet.
But I listened for that carefully.
Yes.
And they don't say unit, but they also I think there's a line of dialogue where they ask him, and where are you from? And he kind of doesn't say much about it.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I don't know when unit was created, but you almost get the feeling that he's already slightly part of that.
Right.
So it was good.
Unit kind of made their debut in in another Troughton story that's we haven't covered yet here on Next Stop Everywhere, The Invasion, which is something I'd really like to do. It's 8 episodes, completed with animation, but it's really good, and it has the Cybermen, and like I said, it's the first appearance of Unit, so that would be something I would love to tackle at some point.
Yeah, let's put that on. We've got a plan through the fall.
Yeah.
But let's kind of add that into the list. Let's put that. I think that'd be good.
Yeah, it seems like kind of weird that we haven't talked the first Unit story.
Yeah, I agree.
But
we do a Unit month.
Well, they could do. That's
think about that. Think about that.
We've got some time to kill, so hey,
Yeah.
So that's an idea.
As I talked about a couple of weeks ago, right? Like the heavy lifting is you figuring out. But if we do that, we could come up with a couple of Unit stories and discuss with that theme. That'd be fun. Yeah,
we might need that sooner than expected if we start burning through the rest of our current Doctor series.
Absolutely.
A little quicker than expected. We also had Jack Watling as Professor Edward Travers. And like I mentioned earlier, he was in the previous story, The Abominable Snowman, playing a character 40 years younger there. And we have Tina Packer as Ann Travers, his daughter. But interestingly, Jack Watling, who plays Professor Travers, is the father of Deborah Watling, who plays Victoria Waterfield. Now, some of you, some of you, Classic Who fans like myself, you already knew that, I'm sure, because hey, you're smart. And, but sure, a lot of you, you're like, wait a minute, you mean Professor Travers is Victoria Waterfield's dad, although not really her dad, and then his daughter in this story is played by Tina Packer as Ann Travers, and that's kind of confusing, right? Well, yeah. Which is, but it's pretty cool that and they did share a couple of scenes together, if I'm not mistaken. So it's probably pretty cool that Deborah Watling got to act with her father in a couple of scenes, like as she did in, because she was also one of the companions in The Abominable Snowman. So This is kind of like a return daddy-daughter story.
Yeah, a little bit of reminder, right, of the Doctor's daughter.
Yes.
And that all connection there. So, yeah, that'd be great.
So this would be, I guess, called the companion's father, I guess.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
Interesting. Jack Wolgar played Staff Sergeant Arnold, who meets a very unfortunate fate as he ends up, taken over by the Great Intelligence. Sorry about your luck, because, hey, it's Doctor Who. Derek Pollitt played Private Evans, who's always looking for a quick exit because he's the driver, he is. And he also turned up in a couple of other Doctor Who stories. He played a Private Wright, different private, in John Pertwee's story, The Silurians, which was, of course, the first appearance of the Silurians, and Professor Caldera in the incompleted at the time story Shada from the Tom Baker era, of course, written by Douglas Adams, one of yours truly's favorite authors.
Absolutely.
And so I just thought I'd mention that. A couple other, one other little bit of trivia that I didn't mention. John Levine, known, of course, to classic Who fans as Sergeant Benton from the John Pertwee era, he plays a Yeti in this story. So inside one of those Yeti costumes is Sergeant Benton.
Nice.
Not sure which one, but
okay.
If you know, feel free to tell me, because I don't know. But because they kind of look alike. Go figure. So, but I just thought that was kind of cool, so I thought I'd mention it. Oh, and also, apparently the underground, sets that they used to kind of recreate the London Underground, were apparently so accurate that the BBC was accused of illegally filming in the London Underground properties. Now, according to the director, permission was sought from London Transport to film in the Underground, but the fees they would have charged were so ridiculously expensive, so they nixed that idea. And I think it kind of helped that because so many of those underground sets were were shot in the dark without power, according to the story, that they were able to pull those off a little better in the dark.
Yeah, that's kind of a nice. I had saw that trivia too.
Yeah.
The sets were really well done.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of nice to know that people were doing that, and so it's good. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Then obviously, as someone who was fortunate enough to go to London and go in the London Underground and actually travel by that pretty regularly while I was over there. This story kind of brings back some nice memories of my experience a little bit. Although thankfully, no Yetis at the time.
So, very nice.
Yeah. All right. So 4 topics today, as we'll probably try to breeze through this because, hey, it's just Jesse and me, right?
That's right.
So we'll knock this out. First topic, let's talk about the Second Doctor, Jamie and Victoria, our leads, as this story takes place immediately following the events of The Enemy of the World, which I had the fortune to discuss here on Next Stop Everywhere with DJ Nick. And that story ended with a cliffhanger of the villain, Salamander, also played by Patrick Troughton in that story, was sucked out of the TARDIS, and the TARDIS doors were left open, and our heroes were kind of left almost being sucked out themselves. So when this story starts off, we kind of pick up with that cliffhanger, and then we're off to the races after they finally get to Earth, after getting a little trapped in a web of fear, briefly. So Jesse, what are your thoughts on kind of starting off that cliffhanger and our TARDIS team? What were your thoughts about them?
I really like this cliffhanger beginning. It kind of got you right away, starting with the excitement.
Yes.
They wrapped it up very quickly. We get a few comments from Jamie about, the TARDIS doesn't always take you where you want to go, which
right.
Ever since.
See, even back in the 60s, they were thinking along those lines, right?
Right. And I always think of the classic Neil Gaiman line that says, when when he says, that you didn't always take me where I wanted you to go, and he says, but I always took you where you needed to go.
Right.
I always love that, and I think that I picture a young Neil Gaiman trying, how we sit there and try to figure out things on a show that we love, and we come up with theories on why this happened.
Right.
I figure that's in his mind, and I know he must have loved putting this in quote unquote canon. So I love the fact Jamie is such a great companion. He is always energetic. He's
Heroic.
He's bold. Yeah, heroic. Just really nice to see. I liked Victoria. I think she was kind of game to go
Right.
with what's going on. I didn't see.
She doesn't get a whole lot to do because she
No.
spends a good chunk of the story in that interrogation room or whatever.
Yes.
And then people come in to check on her once in a while. But
Yeah.
other than that, she does. She ends up getting captured and kind of used to encourage the doctor to come to her rescue at one point.
And Patrick Troughton is always. I like him as a doctor. I like, I think, right, the cosmic hobo.
Yes.
Is what people said. I think he shows his intelligence. There is a spark behind his eyes, kind of a twinkle that he's mischievous. And the interactions he had with not only the regular army, but the new colonel that he meets, the professor, everything back and forth. I really liked the dialogue and the interaction between it. So any issues I have with the story is just because I think they had to pad it too much. That I think this is
because it was a 6-parter.
Yeah, I think we could have tightened it up with a 4-parter even, and I think had moved it a little bit later.
Yeah,
I liked, like, at the end, he's really upset that he had a plan, so they were going to capture the great intelligence.
Yeah,
but everyone was worried about him, and he's so angry, and he's like, no, 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 why don't you trust me? Did
it weird you out seeing the doctor act like that?
No, I liked it. I understood. I liked it a lot.
He's like, I had a plan, you idiots.
Yes.
And
yeah.
all you had to do was just let me be there, and I would have taken over his mind.
Mm-hmm. I think that every time we watch these classic Who's, I really think that they all have something to bring, but there is something really unique about the second Doctor and his performance. So I was glad to see that held up for me with another episode, that I liked him a lot, and I liked Jamie just as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah. How about you? So now when you said you've seen this one before. Now, how did you originally, when you were younger, Charles, did you just regularly find classic episodes as you start exploring, or when this one was revealed 7 years ago, you're like, okay, I've got to see this?
Well, what happened was originally I only got to see the first episode because they released this DVD called The Missing, I want to say Lost in Time. That's what it was called. And so they had one release of Lost in Time of all the missing, or the surviving Hartnell episodes that were incomplete, and they had one for the Troughton era. So essentially, like, all the kind of like the missing puzzle pieces that survived. Instead of they couldn't release them as their own DVD because, hey, it's not a complete story, so they decided to cobble all these together, and release them that way. So eventually, I got to see the first episode, and then like later I got a hold of the audio for the entire story, and then in 2013 when they announced that they recovered these, they came out with a very bare bones DVD release, and that's when I got to see the full thing.
So this is almost when they released this,
Yeah,
to put it in terms of music,
yeah,
it's almost we're going to release a box set of outtakes.
yes,
These are not complete songs. These are just
like demos or
possibly,
something.
yeah, yeah. And so, I bet that was interesting to see,
oh
just
yeah.
because, um, yeah, because back then, they didn't save everything. Some people,
They junked it. A lot of them, and they ended
yeah.
up having to be Uh, I'm trying to remember the guy that rescued them, but I'm blanking on his name at the moment. I know it's Ian something. Um, some of them he recovered, but it wasn't able to recover them all. So from being scrapped by the BBC in their infinite stupidity. So so therefore we've got a lot of incompletes, and that's why they're trying to complete some of these with animation, and so that they can actually release them properly.
It and this is pretty common.
Yeah,
Like I remember, and boy, we're going to date ourselves now.
yeah.
Um, Long time ago, a guy named Johnny Carson hosted the Tonight Show, and he
Tell me
was
about Johnny
there.
Carson, Grandpa.
Yeah, and for years, he was the king of late night. And when they would do anniversary shows, they would say they didn't have the original. A lot of the first shows they never recorded.
Yeah,
Um, which, as we continue, one of the reasons why I Love Lucy and Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz were so smart
right.
is they agreed in the, okay, we own the copies, and so they kept that. So yeah, because a lot of people, this isn't important. We're just going to the same way you used to do VHS tapes.
Yeah.
I'm just going to retape over it. And
Yeah.
so we lost a lot of things.
Right. So just not people with not a lot of foresight, unfortunately.
Exactly.
But I love.
Now, how about you? Are you? No, Victoria. How are you? Talk to me about Victoria and what your thoughts on her and your thoughts on the Doctor.
Well, I was going to say that I love the second Doctor and Jamie. They're one of my favorite Doctor companion pairings ever. They play off so well each other. There's a great bit at the beginning of the story in episode 1 where just after, they solve the dilemma of almost getting sucked out of the TARDIS, and they're kind of like hanging around the TARDIS console eating sandwiches while Victoria's off changing her wardrobe into like a shockingly short skirt for someone from the Victorian era to wear. And like the Jamie and Victoria keep trying to tell the Doctor, hey, this thing's flashing, and so we must have landed. And the Doctor is just completely disbelieving of them. And finally he looks over and he's like, oh, I guess it is flashing. I guess we did land. But the banter in that scene is just, it really exemplifies the dynamic of this particular TARDIS team, and especially, I think, the second Doctor and Jamie.
It almost, and I don't mean this.
You know the scene I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I hope this isn't taken the wrong way, but it almost feels like a modern discussion between, it could be the 10th Doctor and Donna,
right?
Or Matt Smith's Doctor and Amy.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there is that give and take, and you're right. That is so much fun.
And it shows how comfortable they are with each other by this point.
Yes. And there's always a great scene because, yes, the Doctor is always the smartest man in the room.
Right.
But that doesn't mean he's always actually the smartest man. Like he can make errors. And he's like, no. And they're like, oh, yeah, I think it is. No. That makes for a funny scene. It makes for a great reveal. And that was a good, I agree with you. I love that. The interaction between them. It was a lot of fun.
Obviously, the Doctor is kind of forced to kind of step up and lead a little bit here in this one because with the premise of the story is that, there's a few surviving members of the military are kind of trapped in the underground, surrounded by Yetis who have kind of taken over London, and there's with the possibility of, oh hey, there may be a traitor in the group as well. So there's a lot of suspicion going on, and the Doctor has to kind of convince the military, who traditionally he doesn't get along with very well,
Exactly.
that especially in the Pertwee era, that hey, I'm not a spy, or I'm not a traitor, and I'm just trying to help you with this. And then once he finds out that the Yeti are involved, he figures, well, that means if the Yeti is involved, that means the great intelligence, and that kind of because we were introduced to that villain previously, that the Doctor sees the importance of this threat that they're facing.
Yeah.
And so it's very very nice to see, and then especially when the Brigadier shows up, and immediately those two characters, and we're obviously going to talk about, well, Colonel Lethbridge-Stewart, as I keep correcting myself to the Brigadier, just you get to see that early dynamic, and it's very interesting, and especially when the Doctor mentions, oh hey, I've got this craft and it can travel in time and space. And the Brigadier has a surprising reaction to that, but we can talk more about that later. So.
So give me your thoughts on Victoria.
Yeah,
I thought she was good.
Yeah, Victoria's fine. Like I said, unfortunately, she doesn't get a lot to do in this story. I don't, as far as a companion goes, I don't like her as much as I like Zoe with the Doctor and Jamie.
Okay.
We haven't really talked much about, we talked about the War Games, I believe, where you got to know Zoe.
Yes.
But, just that, I think Zoe was a better companion because she offered more as a companion.
Okay.
She was smart. She was super intelligent, just like the Doctor. She had a skill set that she brought to the table, with her kind of coming from a futuristic background, space background. So Victoria, not so much. And so because she's someone from the past, just like Jamie. And unfortunately doesn't bring as much to this.
Okay.
Although I do like Victoria. And it just depends on certain scenes that she's in that I enjoy her, but I just don't enjoy her as much as other companions.
Okay.
If that's fair.
Makes sense.
All right. Anything else about our TARDIS team?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Topic number 2. Let's talk just a little bit about Professor Travers and his daughter Anne, and everything that basically, essentially, Professor Travers is kind of responsible for everything that happens in this story, indirectly, because, well, hey, his curiosity kind of gets the better of him, and we see him going 40 years after his original Tibetan expedition to this guy that basically has a private collection, and he even has a Yeti, one of the robot Yetis, which is inactive until, oh hey, one of those control spheres shows up and inserts itself in the Yeti, and the Yeti comes to life and kills said collector guy. So what are your thoughts about Professor Travers and his daughter Anne, who kind of steps up a little bit and kind of almost serves as a little bit of a companion to the Second Doctor in this story?
She does. And you kind of wonder, at times this was a crowded cast, a lot going on.
Right.
And so I did like both characters. I always like that someone knows the Doctor and is kind of, we talked about that last episode, right, where they had he was friends.
Yeah.
So I thought
it kind of gives him a little bit of credibility with the people in charge.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I thought this was good. A little overcomplicated
Yeah.
right? Like to go, like, okay, I think we're making this a little
Yeah.
tougher than it needs to be, but we got to spread it out.
Yeah.
But I liked him. I especially liked her. I thought um, she was a strong. She did some. She took some chances. She moved on. Yeah. So I think both of them were really nice supporting players.
Yeah. There was, speaking of her being, kind of strong, there's a great scene that I've got the quotes for. Her and Chorley, the reporter, they kind of have butt heads a little bit. And he kind of sees her as this like kind of stuck up university girl. And she's like basically like, look, just step off, back the F up, or, I've got this kitty's got claws and she's not afraid to use them.
Yeah, and I actually liked that. I thought that
She's not not a delicate wallflower by any means.
yeah, and I thought that was good. I thought that the impact, the interchange between her and the reporter was really cool to see. I thought that was nice.
Yeah, and Professor Travers, it's kind of interesting, that when that scene early on when he's, they find essentially, Travers and his daughter come to where the doctor, Jamie, and Victoria are being held in that little room. And Travers realizes, you see the lights go on, that, oh my God, it's the same people that I met 40 years ago, only they look exactly the same because, hey, time travel. And I would like to know what his thoughts were, like, okay, you guys look exactly like I knew you 40 years ago, well, I've turned into an old guy. That's not fair.
Yeah, they didn't really cover that, did they?
No. You think you have a little, at least a little bit of grumbling about that?
Yeah, like, hey, what's
like you're all still young and I'm old. Yeah. What's up with that?
Absolutely.
But now he has his daughter, and it's kind of nice, to see him, the two working together. And I really like that Anne was given some respect by the military.
Yes.
She, there was a little bit of like, well, hey, are you guys still working on, her and the doctor still working on gadgets to help us? But apart from that, they were taking her very seriously. Yes. And and especially for the classic era, that's very rare. So I definitely appreciated that.
Especially when you compare when last week's episode, where this is my secretary,
yes,
this is my assistant. There was a lot of, you should go get us coffee,
dismissing the women in the story. Yeah,
we did not see as much this time.
No, and Anne isn't the kind of, like, she wasn't asking the doctor all these questions about what he was trying to have her do.
Yeah.
She just went ahead and like, okay, I'm going to help you. And so she obviously knew, had something going on, and the doctor respected her skills, and consequently, those two got along pretty well.
Totally agree. Good stuff.
Okay. Anything else about these two characters?
Nope. I'm ready to move on.
All right, moving on. See how we're breezing through this? Topic number 3. All right, here we go. Colonel Alastair Gordon Lethbridge-Stewart. And we will also talk about Harold Chorley, the reporter, kind of a scumbaggy reporter, and Private Evans, who, hey, I wasn't supposed to be here today. That's essentially his whole raison d'etre, a little bit. That he's just the driver. I'm not supposed to be here, so I could just leave, right? And so I want to get your thoughts on these three characters.
They
especially the introduction to the brig.
Yeah, the colonel immediately strikes you as someone who is smarter than the rest of the military. The military does not come across very good in this series of episodes. Yeah.
They kind of get their ass kicked by the Yetis. Yeah.
Yes, they do. very sharp, seems to be, and I think a lot of that is the chemistry of, the actor's presence, as we talked about a little bit earlier. This actor really shines in this role. I think he does a lot with it. And, often we say, wow, I'd like to see more of this. Like, I'd be interested in blank being a companion down the road.
Right.
Whoever in 1968,
yes,
whatever Charles and Jesse, in whatever version of a podcast, which would probably be tea at a pub.
Well, I wasn't even born yet, so
right. Yeah, but I'm saying that the version of Charles and Jesse that we're discussing this.
Yes.
Whoever they are, I would see them saying, I really like this Colonel guy. I'd like to see him be a companion down the future.
Right.
And then we end up getting him.
This guy's got potential.
This guy's got potential. He's got some moxie.
He's got moxie. Yeah.
I
love that word, moxie.
Yes. So I thought that was really nice. Yes, the private is just this little, and you're quoting, Kevin Smith. Yeah. And that's just perfect. It is, because he's like, no, I'm not taking no responsibility.
Yeah, like you got the reference to Clerks. Yes. I wasn't supposed to be, Randall, like, I wasn't supposed to be here today.
Yes. So that was great. It was really nice. And yes, the reporter, your typical, not the dedicated journalist that we often see in real life and portrayed in film.
This is the guy looking for a story, and he's willing to exploit people.
Yes, and so I thought that was a nice wrinkle.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah. So it obviously a lot of butting heads, and a lot of times they're very suspicious because of, again, the whole subplot of there being a possible traitor in the group that that nobody knows. So of course, Chorley gets suspected at one point. So does Evans, and Evans is like, look, don't even think of suspecting me, okay?
Yeah, I think once again they kind of stretched that too much.
Yeah.
But I think they needed to make it go 6 episodes.
Yeah.
But yeah, the kind of turn, because you felt like we're repeating the same storyline a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Obviously, for any Doctor Who fan, the real joy in this story is seeing the Doctor meet the Brigadier for the first time.
Absolutely.
As Colonel Lethbridge-Stewart. And the two of them, it's an interesting, because they start off, the Brigadier, or excuse me, well, I keep calling the Brigadier, the Colonel holds the Doctor at knife point.
So I've got to say, this is like, I always want to, and you call me on this.
Yeah.
It's always DJ Nick, and I go DJ, and like, no,
his name's Nick.
Yeah, and so you're thinking his name's Brigadier, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just like, okay,
yeah, exactly.
He's the Brigadier. Yeah. So right. It's very hard for me to. Thankfully, it's only in this story that he's called the Colonel. Yeah. So so most the 99% of the rest of the time, I'm good, but in this story, not so much. But yeah, they meet essentially because the Doctor sees the Doctor, or excuse me, the Colonel sees the Doctor walking along, and thinks he's a saboteur or something, and holds him at knife point. And all of a sudden, oh hey, they come back to the base, and they're just like, oh yeah, hey, we kind of bumped into each other. And then, from there, the Colonel, he starts to respect the Doctor, and, he's like, look, I'm not sure, if he's going to come up with a solution for this, but he's really the only guy coming up with any kind of plan here. And I love the fact that, interestingly, when he finds out about the Doctor's time machine, the Colonel, instead of just like, oh, that's rubbish, that's he's just making this up, he must be a madman or something, he's actually receptive to the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes a comment, and that, well, hey, we may not have many options for getting out of this, and I'm not going to just discount, because he kind of scolds one of his subordinates, one of the subordinate soldiers, about like, hey, maybe we should kind of like just keep this plan an option, like in case he's actually right.
Yeah.
So what did you think of the doctor not dismissing or the colonel not dismissing the doctor's ability to travel in time and space outright?
Yeah, I think partly because we know later he accepts that.
Yeah.
And all I could think is, how many versions of the doctor did the brigadier, currently the colonel,
Yeah.
end up interacting with, right?
See, I'm not the only one who does it.
Exactly. And so I thought that was, you're seeing the origin of a epic friendship.
Yes.
And that is cool to see.
Yeah.
And how, and it shows how smart, Stewart is.
Yes.
That wait a minute. Let's just not throw this out right away. There
Right.
are things here that give proof that they may be telling the truth. So I was really happy to see that. I thought that was very good.
Yeah, you think the colonel would be like, okay, so London has been taken over by these giant Yeti monsters that are spraying webs all over the place and killing people. And I'm going to dismiss this guy? Well,
Yeah.
So, and we don't know exactly, because it was never revealed on the show, what exactly the colonel's background was before he shows up in this story. So maybe he had some prior experiences.
Yeah,
that made him more open-minded.
Yeah, I know Unit has not been introduced, but you almost get the idea behind the scenes, if not Unit,
right.
a faction of the British military that had been involved with this, not necessarily Torchwood or Unit, but something that later becomes that, and he may have been involved.
Yeah, and it's a credit to Nicholas Courtney's performance that, he's so charismatic, he clicks instantly with the doctor, and they make such a good, like, kind of like a Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson type pairing that you could understand why they decided, hey, we need to bring this guy back in the invasion. And we might as well go ahead and give him a team of specialized soldiers to investigate these kind of things.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. I have no doubt that's what their version of the writers' room said. Oh, this is what we should do.
Yeah. All right. Anything else about these characters?
I'm good.
Okay, let's move on. Topic number 4: the Great Intelligence. The Yetis and Staff Sergeant Arnold, who, like I mentioned earlier, meets a rather fate as we find out that, oh, hey, the Great Intelligence took him over, and, he's dead. The real Arnold's dead, and the Intelligence is just kind of using his body until his plan, as we find out, is like he orchestrated events just to get the doctor there so that, hey, I can steal the doctor's knowledge and of time and space. And that was his big plan through all this. So what are your thoughts on the Great Intelligence and the Yetis and what happened to poor Sergeant Arnold?
So the Great Intelligence is one of those villains that I don't fully appreciate. Right. I get that, and I'm curious.
You got to know about him during the Matt Smith era.
Yes. So it's good to see this early episode. When people mock Classic Who, the android Yetis are a prime example of why they are mock worthy, right?
Right. They're not the best Doctor Who monsters.
No, yeah, exactly.
They're not the worst.
No.
I've seen worse.
Yes,
but
that's a low bar, Charles.
But they're not the best.
Yeah. But I thought it was interesting. It kind of um, the the web shooters almost look like the War Machine gas
Yeah,
shooters. They
the
they
spray.
look similar. Yeah, the sprayers.
Yeah,
I thought it was. I don't quite understand why the firing pins stopped on all the
in the
weapons
War
via
Machines.
this. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
but
on this whole, I'm sorry, the webs. Yeah, I'm getting the two.
yeah.
The webs were kind of funny.
Well, the webs actually kind of killed people. So
Yes. Like
and
I
and
said,
and, and they used them to remember they were going to blow up a bunch of explosives. And,
this
and and they surrounded the explosive with the webs, and so therefore the explosions didn't go off.
this this seems like a very complicated plan
Yeah,
by the intelligent.
yeah. Well,
So
he's bored. He's got time to kill. He's had 40
I guess
years
so.
to think about this.
Yeah, I guess he's like building like like the old toy mousetrap where you use
Yes,
all different
the
things to try.
mousetrap game. Yeah,
Yeah, he's got all this idea to
yeah,
get this going. So
yeah. So he's setting up the bathtub, and the on the pole, and and then the boot is going to kick the seesaw, and it's going to cause the ball to flip over into knock over that into the pole, so that sends the bathtub coming down, and yeah.
yeah, very nice, Charles.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, I played with that as a kid.
Yeah,
Okay, so just that's what you did in the '70s. All right,
absolutely.
at least when you were a kid like me. And the Great Intelligence, obviously a lot of fans, view this character a lot differently in the modern era, in Matt Smith's era. But here, this is this is only his second appearance, and so and he's coming off that earlier defeat in the Abominable Snowman. Now, what I don't get with the Great Intelligence is like, okay, in the Abominable Snowman, that was set in Tibet, so you could kind of understand why he would disguise his robots as Yetis. Okay,
Okay, got it.
but here in the London Underground, why are they Yetis? I don't get that. Now we're told, oh hey, it's kind of like a Mark II version of the Yetis that they fought in the Abominable Snowman, but I don't get why they had to be Yetis for the
Maybe
life
they
of
were
me.
hoping to,
Like what? Yeah,
lightning would catch on, lightning would strike, and
yeah,
that there would be, that we could reuse the eddies. But yes, that didn't make any sense whatsoever.
yeah. I mean, we don't get to see them again all the way until the Five Doctors when they kind of did a little homage with Patrick Troughton and the Brigadier in an underground passage dealing with a Yeti.
Okay.
But it's just otherwise, yeah, just it was one of those things that kind of confused me. It was like, okay, what? You're in London. You're just nowhere near Tibet, so the theme doesn't quite work, in my opinion.
I agree.
But Staff Sergeant Arnold, I just want to talk about really quickly because here was a guy looked like to be a pretty hardworking military guy. He's one of the we see him through most of the story as one of the more credible soldiers. Certainly a better comparison against Evans, who's completely worthless, and you kind of wonder why
Yeah.
he's even in the military to begin with.
Yes.
But Staff Sergeant Arnold, he does his job, and then there's a battle, and he kind of disappears, and you think, okay, well that's it, he's dead because hey, it's Doctor Who. Only then he shows up alive, and he looks pretty disheveled, but he seems like, okay, I'm back in the fight. Okay, great. Until he's revealed as the Great Intelligence. So were you surprised at all by that reveal? Or did you totally see it coming?
I knew someone was, and so
Yeah.
that made perfect sense. I don't remember being surprised, but also not like, okay, I saw this coming. I just like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
The issue kind of is there's a lot of episodes to go through, and at times the story wanders and it isn't as strong as in point on what you want it to be. So, and I think that's my issue with it is I think this needed a strong rewrite to make sure, okay, what is the point we're trying to get through? What is the themes we're trying to hit? What is the villain we're trying to show?
Right.
But, I thought it was a nice reveal, and certainly, if we get the ending that we've already talked about where the doctor, knows what's going on and kind of has a plan to take out the great intelligence,
Right.
was good to see. So.
Yep. All right. So do you understand at least why this story is kind of sort of regarded as a little bit of a classic?
Well, you've got if nothing else, the introduction
Yes.
of, this major
Character.
part of the Doctor Who mythos.
Yeah.
And because it was so lost, I certainly get it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is, I'm really glad we covered it. I think it's nice. And so, yeah, I'm glad you picked it up, and I certainly can understand why people liked it. And I do think if I take time to watch it a second time,
yeah,
I might go, pick up things that I had not seen before.
Yeah, little character bits and whatnot.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Anything else about the story?
Okay.
That you want to cover that I didn't cover?
There is a scene.
Yeah.
Toward the end, I think it's in episode 5.
Okay.
Where the Doctor is playing the recorder.
Oh, yes. Well,
and
it was something I was going to bring up when we talked about but go ahead. You can do it now.
And he's playing the theme.
Yeah.
To Outlander.
Yes, he is.
And I'm going, what the F? So I immediately go to Google.
Yes.
This is the Skyboat song.
Yes.
And I had not known that this is a classic Scottish song.
Right.
That they had taken and reused, because I am with the theme. Right in the top of things I love about Outlander is that theme music.
Right.
It is just the imagery and the music. Sing me a song.
Yeah.
And
now you know they stole it.
Yeah, exactly.
They stole it from the Doctor.
Yes, but which goes again to Diana has said this
Diana
is
Galbadon,
this is Doctor Who fan fiction. I want this.
That's what I've been telling you.
Yes,
that's what I'm saying.
Jamie, I wanted this character. She did not realize that when she gave him Frazer that was the actor's real name.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I heard that song, I went, oh my goodness, this is greatness.
Yeah.
So yes,
So if you have any doubts about Outlander essentially being Jamie McCrimmon fan fiction,
exactly.
Here's the Doctor playing the Outlander theme to Jamie McCrimmon.
Yes.
Case closed.
Absolutely.
The defense rests, Your Honor.
Exactly.
Or the prosecution rests, I should say. Prosecution rests. All right. All right. So anything else? But I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to bring because one of our listeners brings it up in our email.
Okay, great.
But that's okay. But I'm glad you brought it up. All right. Favorite quotes. Do you have any favorite quotes you want to talk about?
I don't have many.
Okay. All right.
But I do have one that it's the very beginning, and it is so the Doctor.
Yes.
The Doctor says, "For the moment, we have eluded our captor. Look at the scanner, both of you." And Victoria says, "Well, where are we?" And the Doctor says, "I really don't know, Victoria. Shall we go out and have a look?" And Victoria says, "Now? Is it safe?" "Oh, I shouldn't think so for a moment. Jamie, I think we're going to need torches." That's the Doctor.
Yes. And he says it so mischievously.
Yes.
Just like, "Oh, I shouldn't think so for a moment." So essentially what he's telling Victoria is, no, it's not safe. Let's go.
Yes.
It's fun.
Yes.
And that's the Doctor. The Doctor's all about the adventure. And Victoria is far more sensible and is going, is this really a good idea, Doctor? I'm not sold on this one.
I agree. Absolutely.
But yeah, you're right. That is very definitive doctor right there.
How about you? Do you got a couple for us?
Yeah, that was one of them that I had.
Okay.
I like that. I mentioned earlier that this little exchange between Corley, the reporter, and Anne, where Corley's going, "Oh, for goodness sake, why is everybody being so evasive? Why won't anybody answer any questions?" And Anne replies, "Perhaps they're afraid you'll interpret them in your own inimitable style." And Corley's like, "What does that mean, pray?" Anne replies, "It means you have a reputation for distorting the truth. You take reality and you make it into a comic strip. In short, Mr. Corley, you are a sensationalizer." And Corley kind of snaps back at her, a little pissed off by this point. And he goes, "You smug little red brick university." And he gets cut off by Anne, says, "Don't say it, Mr. Corley. I have a very quick temper and very long claws."
That's great.
Yeah.
That was nice. That was real nice. Yes.
So it's cool to see Anne take him down a little bit.
I agree.
A peg there. Jamie and Evans. I got a couple of Evans quotes because Evans is kind of hilarious, even being as cowardly as he is. Jamie says to Evans, "So, you meant what you said then? You're not going back to HQ?" And Evans says, "No, I'd be more of a hindrance, I would. Anyway, I'm not supposed to be down here. I'm a driver, I am." And Jamie replies, "Aye, there's another word I could use. Look, all you want to do is save your own skin." And Evans replies, "Well, it's the only one I got." So I thought there was a good little summation of his character.
Absolutely.
Colonel Lethbridge-Stewart talking to Captain Knight, where Colonel Stewart says, "So, you don't believe him?" And they're talking about the doctor. Captain Knight says, "No, of course not, sir. The whole idea is screwy. A police box?" And Colonel Lethbridge-Stewart says, "Well, whether you think it foolish or not, we are going to rescue that craft." And Knight replies, "Oh, but sir, our job." And then Colonel Lethbridge-Stewart cuts him off and says, "Captain Knight, the Army has failed to defeat this menace. Now the doctor thinks he might succeed. Personally, I doubt it, but if we stay here, we're as good as dead. Therefore, I do not intend to leave any escape route unexplored, however screwy you may think it."
Nice.
Such a great introduction to the Brigadier there.
It is very nice. Yes.
Yeah. And then lastly, Evans and Colonel Lethbridge-Stewart, where Evans asks for permission. He says, "Permission to speak, sir." And Lethbridge-Stewart says, "Yes, what is it, Evans?" Evans replies, "Well, stop me if I've got it wrong, sir, but if this intelligence thing here gets the doctor, will you leave all of us alone?" And Lethbridge-Stewart replies, "Yes, that's what it looks like. What's on your mind?" And Evans replies, he says, "Well, sir, why don't we just let it have him? Then we could all go home."
I did like that scene. Like, okay, I'm just being practical. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. All right, they're after him. They're not after us. So we just give him the doctor. It's all cool. We can go home.
Exactly.
Watch some football. It's all good on the telly.
Yes.
But anyway, so I kind of find Evans a little amusing, personally.
Absolutely.
Being such a horrible coward. What's your rating for this one?
So I'm really torn because we get the Skyboat song, we get the introduction of the Colonel.
Yeah.
But I think this was a little long and tough to follow. But I ended up giving it 7.5 out of 10 recorder versions of the Skyboat song.
Okay.
How about you?
Well, that's it's a little higher than I expected. The way you were talking there on the Twitter machine.
Yes, there's a couple of things that, like, story-wise, I probably would have given it 6 out of 10. But as you throw in that moment, you throw in the Colonel, you got to give it a few more points.
Yeah. Well, in that same vein, I give this one 8.5 out of 10 control spheres.
Okay, good.
I really like this one. It's a lot of fun. We're kind of like walking around the underground and dealing with the Yetis, and we get the great intelligence, who I have a little bit more appreciation for now after the Matt Smith era. And hey, it's the first Brigadier story even though he's not
Yes.
the brigadier yet. And it's kind of important. And
Yeah,
it can't go wrong with the second Doctor, Jamie and Victoria story, as far as I'm concerned. So
I agree.
it's a lot of fun and just kind of like an overall, all around treat for me.
Good.
So
Very nice.
as a classic Who fan. All
Okay.
right. So if you're wondering, as we reverse the polarity, um, what's modern era story would kind of go along with this? Well, obviously you probably have a few in mind. The one I picked was The Snowmen, the 2012 Christmas special written by Stephen Moffat. And in this one, of course, it's an 11th Doctor story, and since we're talking so much about the 11th Doctor, and in this one, in 1892 London, the 11th Doctor has retired from saving people and uses his allies, Madame Vastra, Jenny, and Strax, the Paternoster gang, to keep people away from him while he lives in the clouds above Earth. One night, barmaid Clara Oswin Oswald follows the Doctor, and the two of them are surrounded by snowmen created from snow with psychic properties. The Doctor realizes that Clara's thoughts are creating the snowmen and ends the threat by instructing her to think of them melting. That same night, Dr. Walter Simeon is walking through town and is confronted by Jenny and a veiled Vastra. Clara returns to her other job as a governess for Francesca Latimer, who has been having horrible dreams about their previous governess returning from the dead. Clara realizes that the pond that contains the old governess's body is the only thing still frozen around them. She attempts to track down the Doctor and is taken to see Vastra. Vastra tells Clara that she only gets one word to impress the Doctor with if she wants his help. Clara chooses the word pond, which of course arouses the Doctor's interest because, of course, Amy. Dressing in an outfit he previously wore in his fourth incarnation, the Doctor goes to Dr. Simeon's institute, pretending to be Sherlock Holmes, and smacks a large glass sphere with his walking stick, prompting it to speak to him. And the entity inside, of course, calls itself the Intelligence. The Doctor visits the Latimer family pond and realizes that the Great Intelligence, the entity controlling Dr. Simeon since he was a boy, and the snowman, is using the old governess's body as a DNA blueprint to form an ice creature that will retain its form and not melt. While Clara puts Francesca to bed, the frozen body of the governess breaks into the house. The Doctor tries fleeing with Clara, but Clara is mortally wounded by the ice governess, which is also shattered. The Doctor tricks Simeon into opening a tin holding a memory worm inside, which latches onto him. The Doctor states that the Great Intelligence, which has been existing as a mirror of Simeon's thoughts, will vanish with the erasure of Simeon's memories by the worm. Instead, the Intelligence takes control of Simeon's body, kind of like the Intelligence took control of the Staff Sergeant Arnold's body, and the influence of the Great Intelligence quickly wanes and Simeon falls dead. At Clara's funeral, the Doctor reads her full name on her tombstone and realizes she is the same woman as Oswin Oswald, who died on the Daleks' Asylum planet. The Doctor announces that a person dying twice is an impossibility and departs in the TARDIS to investigate and find Clara.
Dun dun dun.
The end.
Yes.
Woo-woo!
Nice.
Yep. So if you enjoyed The Web of Fear, my recommendation, of course, is The Snowmen.
Absolutely.
Which is also a very fun story.
It is a good story.
One of my favorite Christmas specials.
Yes.
So news-wise, not much to talk about at the moment, although there was another Doctor Who lockdown since we last talked, where, and in this one, this was regarding the Peter Capaldi two-parter, the Zygon invasion and the Zygon inversion, which we've talked about here on Next Stop Everywhere, if you want to check those out, from Once Upon a Time. And this week, to kind of as an introduction to those, that rewatch of those two episodes, writer Peter Harness wrote a new story, a little 3 minute, 20-second YouTube video called The Zygon Isolation for the rewatch. And oh hey, Ingrid Oliver reprises her role as Petronella Osgood and her Zygon duplicate. So did you get a chance to check that one out?
I did, and I just loved it. I'm a big Osgood fan. I
Right.
love that actress. I love the character, and I love them. Um, it. I love the interaction about the inhaler.
Yeah.
I miss ice cream, but you're eating ice cream all the time. And one of them says, "I miss the feel of the sun on my suckers." Oh, give
My
yourself
blobby
away.
suckers. Yeah.
Yeah, just really cute and really well done. Um, I liked it a lot. How about you, Charles?
Yeah. I mean, it was very fun, and it was just such a joy to see Ingrid Oliver like playing against herself.
Yes.
And we did, like you said, we got a very clear explanation about which one was the real Osgood and which
Yeah.
one was the duplicate.
Hmm.
Um, and so that was a lot of fun to see those two. And they're still like sisters almost,
Yes, they are.
like twin sisters. And they're talking about like stuff like what they've been watching, the Great British Sewing Bee, and they talk about the ravens at the Tower of London having new chicks, and in a very smart way to segue to the rewatch,
Hmm.
Osgood clicks on the Zygon invasion on the BBC iPlayer. So
Yes,
how meta was that?
it was very meta. It was like it a lot.
Yeah, so that just came out here on May 10th, 2020.
Yeah.
So if you want to check it out, it's on YouTube right now. It's called the Zygon Isolation. If you haven't seen it,
Yes.
highly recommended.
So I have a question,
Yeah.
Charles.
Yes.
Tell me what you know about this Time Lord Victorious books and special that we got going on.
Yeah.
What
Well,
you know
I did write an article about it for my blog Geeky Things.
ah
So if you want to check that out, I've got a big full article about that.
okay.
But let me pull up my article there so I can refresh my memory a little bit.
So the biggest
So
question is
yes,
this something we're going to be able to cover? And is this just a crossover that we're going to have to buy a lot of different things to kind of know? Like, do you get a feel what story they're trying to tell?
well, from what I understand, I mean this was been presented as a multi-platform story, meaning
Right.
that we're going to get some story set in this world that they're creating. This is kind of like a theme, and some of them are going to be told over books because we got a couple of book announcements already, BBC books, and then some of them are going to be told in Big Finish audio adventures,
Okay.
which haven't been officially announced yet, but there's supposed to be that. There's going to be comics. There's going to be, according to them, vinyl, digital, immersive theater, escape rooms, and games.
Okay.
So it's kind of like I think like with the Star Wars expanded universe
Okay.
a little bit. Like where you had a bunch of novels and stuff that kind of tied in. Um, just kind of take that
Okay.
and kind of spread it across a lot of different platforms, media platforms.
Okay.
And so it's going to be kind of like that. Now, the first two, there's essentially what this is. It's going to be set within the dark times at the start of the universe, according to this, when even the Eternals were young. And it features the 8th, ninth, and 10th Doctors traveling across space and time as they defend the universe from a terrible race. And as well as the three Doctors, you're going to get companion Rose Tyler and some monsters, including the Daleks and the Ood, are going to be part of this. And there's going to be more coming out, obviously, in the months ahead. But this is supposed to start in around September of this year.
Yeah.
And and obviously the title, the Time Lord Victorious, is a pretty much a direct reference to the Waters of Mars. So you kind of wonder if as far as the 10th Doctor is concerned, maybe this is set right after the Waters of Mars, maybe. So we get
Yeah.
that Time Lord Victorious Doctor a little bit.
Yeah, I think it could be. I
Which
think
could
that
be interesting. So essentially, the Time War isn't enough going on, but there's like another Time War of sorts
Yeah.
going on here. So, it's just, and, another big question obviously is, well, if there are Big Finish audios, is Christopher Eccleston going to be part of this or not? Now, obviously, the smart money is on no.
Right.
But we might get, like, hey, the Eighth Doctor teaming up with the 10th Doctor,
Yeah, which would be nice.
which would be nice, unless they kind of recast the Ninth Doctor played by somebody else.
Yeah, and I don't want him to do that. I respect Christopher Eccleston.
Unless they have a really good impressionist.
Yeah, I respect that that his time in the TARDIS wasn't as his most enjoyable. But it would be nice, just from a fan perspective, to have him do, like,
it'd be a hell of a surprise, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be, like when they all did the thank you to the healthcare workers.
Yeah,
I just, you would have thought,
and Eccleston wasn't part of that again.
Yeah, that Eccleston would have said yeah, and I don't know, maybe he's worried. You give an inch, you take a mile. That maybe he's worried, but it just would have been nice to see. And I really respect him as an actor. He has been amazing in a lot of other stuff.
See, I don't know how you not be a part of that.
Yeah, exactly.
It was very frustrating to me because, it just brings up the whole, just that, the frustration I feel toward Eccleston.
Yeah.
And he does, he drops a little tidbit here in an interview here and there. He talks about, the difficulty he had, and you can kind of start to sympathize with him.
Yeah.
And then he does stuff like, oh, hey, there's 13 other doctors being a part of this.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And so what else are you doing during the lockdown?
Yeah, exactly.
Chris,
right.
I have to wonder. So I think there's a little bit more than just, well, I had some problems with production going on here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I doubt we'll ever get the full real story, but I find it personally very hard to sympathize when he does stuff like this.
Absolutely. All right.
And it kind of sets back that, any ground he gets of goodwill a little bit. All right. Listener feedback. We got a couple. Our seemingly regular listeners writing in once again. So we've got David K. Proctor first and Holly. So do you want David first or do you want Holly to read?
You tell me which one to read and you read the other.
I could do David K. Proctor's if you want.
Okay, go for it. And I'll read Holly.
Okay. So we're talking, of course, about the Web of Fear, today's episode. David K. Proctor writes in and says, I do like Patrick Troughton. Selling the idea that a main character can be replaced led to Bewitched and Roseanne being able to do it. Seriously, this was an enjoyable romp in the London Underground. I like that the contemporary audience, this was familiar, but not to the TARDIS crew, except, of course, to the alien. Pacing, 6 parts. Kind of drags a bit, but good compelling TV for the time, I'm sure. American TV was mostly drivel back then with few gems. On the BBC, I can't imagine much better. Perhaps not drivel, but less exciting highbrow drama. I'm sad that all is left of the one episode is stills, but they made good use of those frames. Some modern people can't get past the cheesy special effects and monsters, but the Yetis were better than the War Machines by an order of magnitude. I give the show 8 out of 10 long lost acquaintances through time. I like that the contemporary fans would have known some of the characters from a previous series. I do have one curiosity that I cannot solve on my own. I know that the Yetis are man-made robots, and as such, the technology was out there to be exploited for a different use, but how is it that their lasting legacy is super expensive coolers and wonderful mugs to keep our coffee hot? Forgive me, I had to. Thanks, David K. Proctor.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
I love your Yeti joke. Well done.
Yep.
Very nice.
I'm surprised you didn't make a joke about Yeti microphones.
Yeah.
But,
okay, Holly Mack.
I even got Jesse a little bit on that one.
Yeah.
All right. Holly Mack writes in as well.
Yeah. Hey, Charles and Jesse. That is us. I really like this story. In the first part of the story, I was really chuckling when the doctor was telling Jamie that he was imagining things, that there was a light flashing on the TARDIS. And then Victoria points it out as well. And the doctor accuses Victoria of teaming up with Jamie. And then he sees the light as well. Jamie's comment about the TARDIS and how the Doctor can't control her. The Doctor's comment just had me shaking my head. I have to say I really love Jamie and Victoria as companions in this story. Chorley is the typical news reporter looking for a story. Can't say that I don't blame Anne and Victoria for not letting him know too much information, but that's not for long when Victoria lets slip about the TARDIS.
Dope.
Evans is quite the interesting soldier, and he plays very well off of Jamie. Yay for the Brig showing up. Nice to see Unit before it was actually called Unit. The reveal at the end to who the great intelligence was trolling, I didn't see coming. To tell you the truth, I actually thought it was going to be Chorley the first time I watched it. The ending with the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria beating a hasty relief from Chorley to the TARDIS had me chuckling. Almost forgot one of my favorite scenes is the Doctor playing his recorder, and it being the Skyboat song was awesome. Just knowing that Jamie was the inspiration for Diana Gabaldon, easy for me to say,
yeah.
And her Outlander series just makes that scene even better. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin.
Yay for Holly.
Thank you, Holly. Yes, that was that's one of the reasons it got a higher point on my ratings is that scene alone.
We'll take what we can get.
Hey, so Charles.
Jamie McCrimmon fan fiction. I'm just saying.
I love Holly.
Yeah.
I love David.
Yeah.
But in case there's someone else out there who wants to give us feedback, how in the world could they?
Well, hey, Jesse. If you want to be like Holly and David, and please do. We'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line. Next Stop Everywhere, smg@gmail.com. The Gmail. Next Stop Everywhere, smg for Southgate Media Group @gmail.com. Or you reach out to us on the Twitter machine @NextStopSMG on Twitter. Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast on Facebook. Or on the Instagrams @Next Stop Everywhere Podcast. And please reach out to us there. Please like and follow us. And I'm sure we definitely appreciate it if there's something we do that you like and you want to tell your friends about us or share episodes with your friends and your followers. Please do. We would definitely appreciate it because, hey, that gets more people headed our way, and hopefully they enjoy us as well and do the same. So appreciate you guys paying it forward. And Jesse, where can they reach you on the fine interwebs?
Well, you can find me on Twitter @JesseJacksonDFW. You can find me on Facebook, Jesse Jackson in Louisville, Texas. You can hear me on multiple podcasts. Charles and I do a couple together. Not only do we talk Doctor Who, but we talk comic book TV series on the Fandom Zone podcast, where we have covered Watchmen and The Boys and the DC Universe, Krypton. So please check us out there. We also, coming up soon, hopefully we're going to get a new season of the Titans or Doom Patrol. And so we do Titan Talk, where we talk about the shows from DC Universe. So you can check those out. We're going to have to start Phantom Zone with Stargirl. I'm really looking forward to Stargirl, Charles.
Well, we'll see. We might be busy with something else, which I'm going to talk about here.
Ah, good. The other thing, then you can also hear me on How Many, the podcast where a bunch of buddies of mine sit around and talk about hopefully interesting things. We have a new one coming out this week where we talk about Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And then, of course, Set Listing Bruce, the Bruce Springsteen podcast, where I talk to Bruce Springsteen fans from around the world about their music fandom. And this week I send out a special remembrance of Mark Rankin, who is the guy who wrote Pretty Flamingo and the theme to the Banana Splits Adventure Hour, the Tra-La-La song, who passed away this weekend. And so Mark
there's a great cover of that by the Dickies, by the way, that I highly recommend.
He joined me last September to talk about that and other things, and so we recorded a new introduction, and I re-released that this week in tribute to the passing of Mark. I think that's it, Charles. How about you?
Well, of course, me, @Charles Skaggs on Twitter, @Charles Skaggs on Instagram. Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere. including your Doctor Who, your Torchwood, your Sarah Jane Adventures. And I've got posts of that Doctor Who Time Lord Victorious. If you want all the details for that, that's on there right now. So please check that out. And also news of my other podcasts I do for Southgate Media Group, including the aforementioned Phantom Zone podcast that I do with Jesse, and Titan Talk, the Titans podcast that I also do with Jesse. And oh, hey, June 25th, you guys, Doom Patrol Season 2 has been announced, and it's going to be debuting on HBO Max, not DC Universe. Or at least it hasn't been announced for DC Universe yet, but it's definitely been announced for HBO Max. So looking forward to that. I know they were supposed to come out on both platforms, but so far they've only announced HBO Max, which is really interesting. Yes. So that's coming up. That's coming up in just a month. So Titan Talk's going to be dusting off and coming back from the dead, or at least in hibernation. And we'll be talking Doom Patrol once again, and I'm really looking forward to it because I can't wait for some new Doom Patrol episodes, you guys. And then also, in addition to that, Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast, they do with Zan Sprouse, whom you've heard here, of course, on Next Stop Everywhere. She's all kinds of lovely and all kinds of cool, probably the coolest person you will ever get to meet on this planet we call Earth. Please check us out on Ghostwood. We have a ball talking Twin Peaks, and we're still plugging ahead with our commentaries as we watch Twin Peaks: The Return once again. And right now we just finished up, I believe, Twin Peaks: The Return Part 14. So we're coming up on the last 4 episodes of this. And so all the good stuff's coming up. And so I hope everybody checks us out if you're not already. We definitely appreciate that. All right. As for next time on Next Stop Everywhere, episode 185, well, hey, we did the Hartnell era, we did the Troughton era today. So, of course, next time we're going to jump ahead to the John Pertwee era as we talk The Ambassadors of Death, which is a pretty cool one. Now, it's a 7-parter, so we'll see how Jesse does with it. But it's got Liz Shaw, as Jesse keeps typing away, type, as he's not focusing on what I'm doing. And we have a special guest companion once again as we get the return of DJ Nick, who we just heard when he was talking the War Machines, but he wanted to talk the Ambassadors of Death with us, and I can't say no to the guy because we love him so much. And hopefully that's okay with you, Jesse. And
always love having Nick with us.
All right, so you know it's going to be good. You know how good Nick is here on Next Stop Everywhere. So come on back next week for episode 185, The Ambassadors of Death. And Jesse, any final words as we sign off? Or any final thoughts?
I appreciate it. This was a fun episode to discuss. I'm really enjoying this our path through Classic Who. And I'm looking forward to, getting all the way back up to the modern era. And so, as always, Charles, thank you for spending time with me. Listeners, thank you for downloading, sharing, talking, and we appreciate it. It means the world to us.
Yes.
As always, as we get through this, stay safe. Everyone continue to do what we've been doing. All the things, social distancing, wearing your mask, washing your hands, because we need you. We need you to be safe. Charles,
exactly.
Take us out.
Yeah. So obviously, everybody, please stay safe, stay smart. If you have the option, go out and get some comic books, and then come right back and hide after disinfecting with all kinds of hand sanitizer. Or take a bath in a bathtub of alcohol or whatever to disinfect, and then come on back next time for episode 185, The Ambassadors of Death. DJ Nick, do I have to say more? I don't think I do. So we'll see you next time right here on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.